Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are in Parashat Reeh. We are moving through rapidly to the end of the book of Devarim, but that doesn't mean there isn't time for one more list of the holidays. Yes, we get these quite frequently throughout the Torah, because, you know, the holidays are kind of important. But exceptionally in this list, it is focused on Shalosh Regalim, the three pilgrimage festivals. It's not about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's certainly not about Tu B'Shvat or Purim or Hanukkah, because all of those holidays came much later than the Torah itself. But the Shalosh Regalim stand out as a unit, as a sort of set of holidays that need to be treated as a set. Let's do a quick review, though. What are the Shalosh Regalim? What are the three pilgrimage festivals?
Sukkot,
Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. Not in that order, right? If we're going in order, Pesach is number one. Shavuot is 50 days later, as we know from the counting of the Omer, showing you the linkage, of course. And then Sukkot, coming at the end of the harvest season, which was primarily begun with Shavuot, although some of the harvest had begun at the time of Pesach as well. The barley, and then wheat, and then the rest of our produce by the time Sukkot rolls around, at least if you are a gardener in Israel. Outside of Israel, the growing seasons are a little different. So what's that?
And there's rain.
And there's a lot of, well, there's rain in Israel when you're lucky.
Yeah.
The early and late rains. If you're outside of Israel, like here in Florida, you get rain whenever it feels like it. But how do these go together? Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, apart from being agricultural festivals, which is a bit of a trite answer, although it may have the seeds of truth in it. What is linking these three holidays together? The Exodus, right? First and foremost, all three of these, as they are found there in the Torah during our leaving of the land of Egypt, first and foremost, they are holidays celebrating the Exodus. Yes, eventually they will be even more important in the sense of the agriculture, but while we were living off manna for 40 years, we didn't have barley and wheat and other things to harvest in any case. But for the Exodus, they all are very prominent, okay? So how do they tie to the Exodus? Pesach is obvious. Pesach is the day of the Exodus itself, the day of our liberation. And Shavuot, connecting to the Exodus, would be Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah there at Har Sinai. Obviously, the purpose of our Exodus, right? It wasn't just about our liberation. It was about why we were being free, what we needed to be free to be able to accomplish. And then Sukkot. In the wilderness, we were protected. There in the wilderness, we lived in Sukkot. We lived in little huts that we would make at each stage of our journey. Not everybody had tents. I'm very sorry, Hollywood. Most people were doing more of the man versus wild little shelters that they would put together. You might call them a lean-to or something. But those were the Sukkot. And metaphorically, we also believe that the Anan, the cloud that accompanied us through the wilderness, was like a giant sukkah protecting us as well through God's beneficence. And thus at Sukkot, we are expressing our gratitude for what God has done for us. Now, that actually feels a little out of place. That is to say, if you look at the three in order, and all of you sort of jump to Sukkot right after Pesach, because that seems to be the more natural feeling. We get out of Egypt, we say thank you, and then God gives us the Torah. But the holidays are not lined up like that. The holidays are lined up that we get out of Egypt, God gives us the Torah, we live by it, and then we say thank you. Because that is the proper order of things. Yes, it's nice to say thank you at the beginning, it's nice to say thank you at each stage of the way, but what we should be most grateful for is a life that was lived while free to be able to follow the Torah. It has to have all of those components. Just being free in and of itself is not the highest level of gift that God has given us. Yes, I know in Dayenu we act like that would be enough, and it would have been enough to still be a miracle and worthy of praise, but it would not have been what we were hoping for in the long run. And just having the Torah, again, would not quite be enough. because having the Torah and having the freedom to live it doesn't mean we actually are. Sukkot comes metaphorically as the end of a life, with the idea of we have lived a life filled with this gift of freedom and purpose and the ability to put those two together. It is that reflection upon a life well lived in a good manner that has allowed us to feel a sense of connection to each other, a sense of connection to our community, a sense of connection to God, and a sense of fulfillment from having lived in that path. The Shalosh Regalim are really a metaphor for life itself, for the different phases that we go through. When we are young, what do we cherish most? Our freedom, our independence, looking for that chance when we can break out on our own from the slavery of childhood. And many of our young people certainly act like they are rebelling against tyrants as they seek to claim that freedom for themselves. As we mature, though, we recognize that freedom without direction is not truly fulfilling. That is just adrift in the waves of the ocean. Instead, we want purpose, fulfillment, a feeling that we are making a difference. But even when we feel that we have that path, that we have charted our course, and that we are walking down it now freely and independently, it is only after many, many years of that that we can truly feel the gratitude for what we've been able to live. Having found that path, having lived that path, having fulfilled our life's destiny, then we can feel true gratitude. It is a long process. It takes a full year for Shalosh Regalim. It takes a full lifetime to experience them. But that liberty, that purpose, and that gratitude, this is what the 3 holidays are bringing together in this very special list in Parashat Reeh. So if you haven't gone through it already, you have until tomorrow afternoon to finish up, and then we move on to the next Torah portion. Otherwise, you'll have to do it out of cycle, which is okay too. Shabbat Shalom.